Welcome. This week we did "Asleep in the Sun" by, oh god,
Real
Adolfo Bois.
what?
Bois? Casares. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I didn't figure out what the name, how to pronounce his middle name, which is how people refer to him. But it was fun. It was fun. It was a Latin American writer, um, about a fun but neurotic man, with a
I noticed the
surprise
theme of the
science
book.
fiction twist. Um,
I oh yeah, surprise science fiction twist. But I've noticed a theme in our choices of weird neurotic modernist novels. Like this fits like squarely in a lot of what we've been reading, and also a lot of um, it's Di Benedetto and this guy are kind of they could be cousins. I don't know about brothers, but cousins for sure.
yeah, like they are certainly cousins. Benedetto's better, but I also found myself exhausted reading De Benedetto. It's like, yeah, every sentence is like crisp and fascinating in De Benedetto and Zama, but like, I just it's hard to keep going. Uh,
It was nice having a more traditional climax in this novel. Like for the first half, I was kind of like once I went surrealism, I started enjoying it a lot more because at first I've been reading a lot more realism, and so then I started reading this and I was like, it's not believable, and I was just not really in the mood. And then by the end, I went, oh my god, it's brilliant. But it took me a while to get into it. I think in the tone and sort of the way this book views reality is much more similar to surrealists. Like I'm thinking the discreet charm of the movie, The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie. It's very similar. That was the closest thing I thought of is that film.
yeah, I in terms of the surrealism, I'm trying to think of the right way of putting it. It's there's just so many things that just don't quite connect, that are just uncanny in the conversations. And like, what are we about here, guys? Why are we doing, and like the weird repetitions that always happen, like,
Yeah,
just someone makes a complaint and then it's repeated later, like, 20 pages later, just like again, like,
that was weird.
what's on
I
here?
mean, and also just like the intensely strange
Okay, we do need
conversation.
to
Let's
explain
give the
what's
plot.
going on
Yeah.
here,
Okay.
though.
So
Like,
the
yeah.
well, I'm
So
not totally sure if I know, but like if we can give some basics. Actually, one of the best and most explanatory covers of all time is this
yeah,
beautiful. Oh,
dreadfully, dreadfully.
yeah. The idea is that like a main character who's pretty likable. I think I liked him actually. He felt kind of lost and sad and I don't know, relatable. The main character, um, Lucio, is with like apparently a crazy lady, but we don't like see her at all in the first half of the entire novel, which was brilliant too. It's like there's all these complaints about her, his wife, but you don't get her experience like at all, really.
Well, okay. It starts off like, okay, he's got kind of an okay relationship with his wife. It's a bit fraught and difficult, but
Yeah.
it's fine. It's working. At some point, she wants to buy a dog, and she spends weeks going to the dog pound or whatever it is to check out the dogs. And at one point, the German dog trainer who runs it is like, Lucio, you your wife is clearly mentally unwell. This level of indecision is demonstrable of illness. Let me send her.
Oh yeah, that was like our first evidence is that she's taking too long to choose a
That was
dog.
the only evidence. That
The
is
only
that
sorry, the
that
only
is
evidence.
the full support of her mental illness.
And also, it's a great inversion on the normal expectation, which is just that, she's just like having an affair with the dog trainer. And instead, the dog trainer is like, we have to take her away or something.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, so like, it's one of these perfect like neurotic moments of he basically agrees with the dog trainer, who doesn't even like very much, just to please him, just to be
Yeah,
agreeable, and he
but he's
regrets it
very fraught about
immediately.
it. Like he yells back and stuff. He's very like he he'll do a thing and then in his mind go, "What the fuck is wrong with me?" Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, what's great about Lucio is he's that simultaneous mixture of fickleness and stubbornness that characterizes neuroticism.
Yeah, and like also an indecision about other people. Like he's like, "Well, maybe he's right." And it's like, "What?" Okay. But to the main character's credit, like some of the great characters are the family, who are all rather strange too.
Yeah, like the well, the fucking God. I'm sorry, the sister-in-law. As soon as basically the wife, Diana, is like taken away, uh, the reaction, the sister-in-law moves in and is just blatantly and in an obvious way like advertising herself to Lucio. Well,
Yeah,
come over here, big boy. And with basically the full consent of the mother, by the way. Um,
yeah.
like the
Because
mother has no
mom and
problem, who also lives there, is just
yeah, because
completely fine with that situation.
they don't
Uh,
really like his wife.
yeah, and the thing that's funny about Lucio, like, he isn't even like, it doesn't even seem he's fully aware that she's trying to seduce him. Um, like maybe at the very end, but it doesn't feel fully like he's even cognizant of this. Um, I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, okay, so
Okay,
even
actually,
more
he is. No,
before we
he
get to
is.
that,
He is cognizant, but
yeah,
it's just he's not reacting like the way a normal married man would react with
no one is.
like please don't or
Like no one's reacting the way people react. I mean, okay, like for example, the his his sister, his sister-in-law has a kid, and the kid is like, "I like your wife more than my mom," and the main character is basically like, "Me too, buddy." And then the kid goes, "You want to sign a blood pact?" It's like what? That was when I started. At first, I was going like, "This is just too cutesy," and that was when I was like, "Oh no, he's really weird." Like I was, my first thought was, "This is just sort of." I texted you last week when I read the first 20 pages, like, "This is the I'm not like other girls of novels."
Yeah.
But by the end, I was like, "No, it's great. It's not performing. It's just genuinely odd." It's
Yeah, it's just conveying this like friendly neuroticism, which is a very the only other book I can think that comes to mind that's quite like this is Italio Sivevo's Zeno's Conscience, which is
yeah.
again just dealing with this deeply neurotic uh, self narration of the main character as he's just doing things, and he's likable, he's friendly, but how does he cross the street unaided? Um,
There's not a there's not a lot of heroicism. Well, actually, he. Okay, so the basic. Let's for spoilers and just let's because
yeah,
this
that's a
this
good
gets
spoiler.
really interesting. Like, so the wife gets taken away by this doctor who's claimed to have found the location of the soul in the brain, and we learn this later on. Of course, we don't really know about it, but basically the big reveal through a series of kind of Shakespearean back and forths where he winds up in the mental institution when she's out, after she's in, and then he escapes, and they track him down, and they finds out that they're putting the human soul parts of the brain into dogs. And um then there's all this like really weird reversals going on, which is just totally like climactically bizarre of like, well, we put that one in there, but then that got over there, and so we cheated it out over there, and it sort of all dissolves at a certain point of like back and forths of soul and dog.
Yeah, it was. okay, I have to just say the experience of reading it, where it's like, look, do you know about the Doctor explaining in the last like 10 pages of the novel? Um, do you know that Descartes thought that the soul was in the pituitary gland? I forget which one. The whatever one, the pineal,
Neil or whatever. Yeah.
pineal.
Neil. Yeah.
And it's like I'm just sort of used to Boya just saying weird crap.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
just, I'm just used to like him just throwing out stuff that doesn't particularly matter on a certain level.
Yeah.
And then it's like the fucking nurse who just throws herself at Lucio and then just starts masturbating on the floor or whatever. Like I'm just fine to let that go. Like okay, yeah, that happened as it does. Um,
Yeah.
but when it was the pineal gland, I was just like, okay, wait, this is we have a plot story now. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
this
We
is all a
certainly have.
science fiction twist. We're in the Twilight Zone. I
Yeah.
didn't
It's
know we
like,
were in the Twilight Zone, guys. That was just such an odd experience, which I kind of should expect from him, like having read like the Invention of Morel, which is a very kind of surreal Twilight Zone episode in its own way. But yeah, anyway,
what I really liked about that reveal, though, is that, and this is what's really hard to do, is it's hard to be ontologically inconsistent, like with your world, and that might not even be the right phrasing, but normally we value a certain amount of reality consistency, like the real is what it is, regardless of what you think about it. And, you know, like if you're reading most just literary fiction and the real changes, usually we think of that as just bad writing. Like, oh, I thought it worked that way, but now it works this way. Oh, you're doing a God of the Gaps thing. But here I don't get any of that. I get sort of a changing reality that somehow works pretty good. I mean, it's
well,
pretty
in
brilliant
this
in that way.
case, he had like it fits in his world.
Yeah.
Like as in it's surprising. Like oh, I didn't know this is how all the pieces fit together. But like in the end, it's like oh yes, now I know. Like for some reason, like having such a weird premise of like we're taking the souls of people and switching them into different bodies. And this is what's happened to your wife, as it turns out. Like, just like that, you could actually make that premise into like a genuine Twilight Zone episode, like with all
Yeah.
of the like normal reasoning and everything. But I don't know. This it also fits in a story where it's just like we're again phrases just get repeated again like and that's when he stabbed me with the hypodermic needle and I passed out like that it
Oh
just
yeah,
like
that
that moment repeated again.
yeah. That was actually brilliant because the experience of that repetition was like a cartoon. Like you watch, oh, I'm going back, oh, and you're at the same place again. And it was like, oh no, look how I wound up at the same place. And it was good. He's kind of it's kind of like bebop. Like it's an setting aside how easy to read it is, he's very quick. Like it's very improvisatory, or it feels improvisatory, where it's like you'll have that little moment of repetition and then you have something else. And it's like the opposite of, I don't know, middle periods of Balzac novels where, you know, you're just kind of there. Like it's very zoop. I don't know. Help me
Oh,
out here. I'm failing at it. What is it like? It's not just quick. It's something else.
I mean there's a very distinctive rhythm like
Yeah.
things always sort of come back but always in this non-logical sort of way or quasi-logical just like the fact like oh yeah we talked about to the lawyer about or the other doctor about getting your wife back, and of course he never follows through with that particular doctor and like pursuing that. And then like later in the novel, it's like, hey, he's really pissed at you and he doesn't want to help you at all. In this new situation, it's just like, okay, that doesn't move the plot forward. This character didn't really count, but fine. Or just I don't, or just like the way like just people in the street keep coming up, like Aldini with his like I don't know, like in invalid wife,
Oh yeah.
or Fats Picardo in his new suit. Um,
Sounds like pension, but it was better than the pension.
yeah, yeah. Because like this
Infinitely
is
so.
Yeah, actually, no, that's a really great comparison because
That's Picardo in his new suit. That's such a pension thing to say, but then it was just so much snappier and
yeah, well,
better,
yeah.
more
Here,
climactic.
actually, that's a really great comparison of this is a paranoid kind of book. I mean, it has the most sort of schizophrenic premise of like, my wife returned, but she is not my wife, even though she seems like my wife.
Yeah.
Like that is the most schizophrenic kind of thing to have happen. Like these sort of secret ploys and plots underneath the surface here, like that's great, but it's actually like done well here. Or I mean, Pynchon does it in a fun way, in like a pop way, in like Crying of Lot 49.
This is
Um,
better. It's
yeah,
just
but
it's infinitely
this is
better.
better. This is
I mean, by
fun.
the end of, and also like even keeping with the pop thing, I was a little bored by the pension by the end, but here I was also more in love with the language. The language was brilliant. The speed was great. I felt like he had more control over his writing. But both of them have that sort of inconsistency in the real, which I really find attractive when done well, because it's kind of like walking a tightrope. If reality is at stake, then it's kind of tricky, because it always wants to slide one way or the other into unreality or into fever dream. Like, oh, that was all a dream, or oh yes, the world really is this topsy turvy, but we're in the dream. So to kind of be in the middle is really hard to do, and that's why I like surrealism and absurdism a lot. Is because they're able to do that.
Yeah, like this is. I mean, we said this about the Benedetto. Like this is like where it's like the Chirico.
Yeah.
It's a more cheerful the Chirico. Um, it's a more.
It's like, yeah, you're right. This is paranoid fiction. This is kind of schizoid. Uh oh, we froze.
Oh, I can hear you. I'm fine.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can
Oh,
hear
I
you.
just have a horrible guffaw stuck on my face.
Well, you're fine on this end.
Oh, I'm not frozen.
No, you're good.
Okay, there we go. That was my end. It's funny. I have to agree with you that it's paranoid fiction, but it was very pleasant, and that's kind of weird too, right? Like it wasn't very. I don't know. I didn't feel actually scared at any moment. Where in like a normal novel where the character's suffering, I'm kind of like, oh God, what are they gonna do? Whereas in this
Like
one, I'm just kind of laughing
yeah,
with
the
them.
obvious contrast is like with Kafka,
Yeah,
where okay, in Kafka you're not. Well, I mean, I can see someone being anxious reading Kafka, but I'm not anxious reading Kafka. Uh, but like you do have this sense of there's something really awful going on here, and I'm gonna get screwed by all of this situation.
yeah,
But here it's sort of, oh, and this is like one thing that happens with like not full schizophrenics, but people who are like schizoid territory, schizoid type personality. Like you just sort of have this dim theory of a conspiracy in your mind, like you're not going all in. But it's like,
yeah,
yeah, I just sort of think about that. I keep it in the background. I still function in the world, and I'm a watch repairer, as Lucio is. But like I have this other thing going on, and like that's what it is. It's like, yeah, I'm a normal man 90% of the time, but I got 10% Kafka going on here. That's kind of what I feel like Bois is like.
yeah. It's kind of like Like
Oh yeah.
at the end of the sentence, if you talk long enough, they will reach the point of, but there's something going on around here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and I think it's hard because I always like read sort of the mood I'm in into books. So like, and I also have a very musical reading of literature where if it's playful and jovial in the speed and rate of activity and jokes and everything, I'm going, wow, this is a happy novel. And then someone will be like, yeah, but Chris, like 8 people got raped and like 10 got murdered. And I'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot the events. And that's like, it's a little bit weird, but it makes sense if you know I come from music, where I'm more focused on rhythm in that way. And so I do admit my own limitations where I go, I don't know overall about the tone quality of the novel. Like for you, what is the overall tone quality of this of the book?
Cheerful. Um,
Yeah. Okay, then I'm not crazy.
no, no, it's
Okay.
like it's a cheerful that's a little bit, it's a little too broad of a smile maybe,
Yeah.
but it's just like there. It is a very nice neurotic man. Like he has problems. He's dealing with things, but like this is not a world that's tragic. It's funny. I mean, I didn't quite laugh reading it. Maybe I would because there's funny stuff. Like just when the sister-in-law is just furious and leaving the house, like that just was funny.
Yeah.
Like this the in,
Well,
in,
there was
and like also the interaction with the doctor. I could see actually this like that scene of like whenever it's like Lucio talking to like the head doctor or whatever it is, those could just be rip roaringly funny if acted correctly.
variety is the spice of life.
Yeah, fine. Who says that about like yeah, we're gonna replace your wife's soul. Are you interested? You know, variety is the spice of life. Um, that is such a flippant thing to say.
Yeah. It's also like that's a moment where he's better than Pynchon. But it's like Pynchon. Like because in Pynchon you have the like kind of cartoonish like too many clothes on scene and everything. But you don't have it climaxing in the way you do in this novel, where you really like in the Pynchon novel, there's vague premonitions of a thing that may or may not be real. In this one, everyone is fucking crazy in a to us. I mean, in from the outside, because they're all behaving strange, and yet somehow retaining their humanity. And I don't always know if in Pynchon the characters retain their humanity.
Yeah, I thinking about the comparison, pension just feels very obvious. You know, like it's just very much like yeah, like I get that joke about it's funny that the main characters in this cartoon show you're watching die. Like that's sort of funny subversion and oh yeah, this getting aroused to watch hearing about all the how many Chinese people there are and or whatever or you know, these jokes are very straightforward in a sense, and the characters just sort of are set up
All
to.
right, Ray, they are in the novel, but the way you said it was like the least straightforward fucking stuff I've ever heard.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, they're laughing at the Chinese arousal. I'm like, what?
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds like random nonsense.
I did pension and injustice. I'll admit that. Um,
I mean, that was just funny. It's like
uh,
and it's like the dance of the seven weasels as they go off the cliff, and you're like, very straightforward, just like classical humor, like normal, good, clean fun.
yeah. Yes.
The scene with the screaming hypodermic needle, totally normal things we do
It's
every day.
obvious. It's very obvious.
Yeah.
But
There was there's a lot of other ways though into the novel. I think a couple comparisons, not in tone, but in happening is do you know the movie The Brood?
no.
So The Brood is Oh, it's by Cronenberg. It's a Cronenberg. So he did like
Yeah, so I've seen like Videodrome, and like I know he's like body horror and all that
very
stuff.
body horror, but in the Brood, it's like his wife has a lot of aggression, and so the doctor takes her away, and she keeps birthing demon kids with her anger, and that's obviously like a different result of this, but there is a similar like okay, this is the same type of stuff. Like, oh, if you like Casares, you'd like The Brood. And in The Brood, the message is something more about like you can't bottle up things. Something simple like that. What is the
I
message?
just, I just, having watched Videodrome, I just feel like that sounds just to attach like such a quaint little like um just childhood cartoon moral to that.
It's way more complicated and gross, obviously. I mean, I've just
Yeah, yeah,
you
just like
know.
I don't know about that, Chris. I
For
mean,
a
sure,
movie, but it's also
I
gross.
don't. I've seen the movie. I'm never going to
Yeah,
go.
you can't bottle it up or you'll produce the demon babies that eat your husband. But I don't know. Okay, so like, but in this one, I was trying to at certain points, and I think I got some messaging. Um, but I'm not saying it's a political message. I think it's more of like a identity message. Like the whole thing seems to be about identity in like a weird paranoiac way. But beyond that, like, do you have any takeaways that Caceres gives us in terms of that, like, not moral of the story, but sort of like, oh yeah, this novel's really about
I mean,
this.
yeah, it gives me a pretty clear vision of how Cazares feels about himself, and I presume just life of just like yeah, like you're friendly, you're well-meaning, and you're really neurotic, and the world around you is just sort of oddly out of tune. Just the way you run into people, just your interactions with them, just surprising and haphazard, and sometimes women just come on to you in really aggressive ways. um,
I mean, it's funny, like when I go, oh yeah, life isn't like that. I then like think of 10 things in the last 10 days where it is. Like I was walking the other day and we have like a lot of homeless people and there's also a lot of like fentanyl. And so they occasionally go a little cuckoo. Um, and this is already closer to Casinos. And it's also sad. But like there's this lady the couple weeks ago where my buddy and I, Preston and I were just walking down the street and she is sprinting at us. And that's fucking terrifying, right? But she was just giving us a flower. She had picked a wildflower and was giving us a wildflower.
there hasn't been a Deado detail right there. That's much
It's
more.
like,
That's much more unhinged.
but it was a little like pressing. Like, oh my god, she's coming at us. We should cross. We cross. She follows us. Here, I found you this flower. Okay, and we were like, thank you. She was like, yeah, have a good day. And then she left, and then we were just like, but so like not obviously changing souls, dogs, and around and all that crap, but like just the general like you go outside and you get accosted by people in the world. It's like, yeah, okay, sometimes you do.
Yeah, I'd say okay. Like, what experience is this relevant to me on? It's I feel like just awkward conversations, just that sort of dim sense of directionlessness, or oh, I mean, just like it does happen all the time, where it's like, yeah, you just get some weird neurotic thought or worry that's just like
Yeah,
running around your mind, and it's kind of cute how pathetic it is, or something like that. Like, okay, I know I've had this in my life like once or twice, where it's like for some reason I just think like there's a sniper like outside of the window. Like that thought just is oddly obtrusive to me. It doesn't
yeah.
really change my action, but like it occurs, and it's like yeah, it's like this sort of unserious paranoia that just drops into your existence. Um, I
Sorry, that's just like a weird example, knowing that the dude tried to kill Trump yesterday. It was the second sniper dude in the last.
okay, when you're
I want to be like, oh, now the former president
when you're
definitely has that
president,
problem.
then yeah, that happens to you. That's
That's okay. That's fair. But on the other hand, it is kind of funny because it was yesterday. I mean, but no, no. I mean, totally. I mean, there's like, I mean, I often think like, what if there's a hole in the back fence and my dog gets out? But there's no hole in the back fence, and there's no other animal to make one. It's the same type of thing. Or like you go outside and it seems windy, and you're like, but how windy could it be? And then you just picture like just mammoth destruction everywhere, and you're like, what? No.
I have a better one.
Yeah.
This is something that happens to me regularly where I don't want to leave too early for something,
Yeah.
and I'm still like, but I'm still thinking about the thing. Like I want to leave early because I'm so sick of like having it in my head, and then I
Yeah.
get to the point where I'm almost late by the time I like leave. Like I'm almost going to be late, and it's just this like just sort of quaint, funny way that it's like neurotic. Um, it's like this is so out of proportion in a way how much emotional energy is going into this, and then how contradictory it is.
Yeah.
So like that feels to me a very Casares kind of thing.
Yeah. I also think so. That's kind of the temperament stuff. I also think that there's a formal consideration here, which is okay. So like she gets put away, and it's sort of well, I guess it's against her will. I mean, she's not even there. So you have this weird absence in the beginning of her identity, right? And weirdly, that's actually really important because she gets so she's actually not in the novel. Oh my God, Ray, she's not in the novel at the beginning.
Yeah,
She's
we
absent
get a
literally.
very short picture of her of like sitting on like being fascinated listening to the German dog trainer who well one wonders
Oh
what the
yeah.
kid was doing before.
That's
Uh,
what we get there. Huh? What else do we get?
and it's like she's just sort of and she's like sitting there by herself, her leg propped up on the chair, her head resting on her knee. And that's kind of the extent of our relationship with the original wife.
Because like and so it's kind of like a brilliant so this is a really formally dazzling thing, right? Because you take her and let's say like, okay, you have that, but structurally she's absent, right? Like she's like her identity's sort of there. So then she's literally absent in the first half, and then she's soul absent in the second half because she comes back, but it's not her, which means that in a weird way, Lucio has no reason to like his wife or something. Like there's something weird
Well,
there, though,
she
right?
has a very beautiful body.
She's
Uh,
very pretty, apparently. But that's kind of a truly absurd thing. And it's very structural in the novel's workings that Lucio has all these thoughts about a sort of shell, kind of, I guess. I mean, if you think about it, like when the sister comes in, another piece of evidence to go how weird this is the sister comes in, and one of the scenes when he's like, "Oh my God, I thought it was my wife," was when she wasn't even looking at him. It was just the back of her head.
yeah, like that.
Not even like her like face.
This is just like in surrealist paintings where you just see the same form repeated again, like Dali's painting of Narcissus, or I forget what
Oh
it's
yeah.
called, but it's like you get the same forms repeated, but it's like absurdly reinterpreted in the same painting. You have
Metamorphosis of Narcissus.
yeah, the Metamorphosis of Narcissus, and it's like that's relevant. Now, okay, another moment that like this reminds me of.
By the way, wait one sec. Great. That's a great comparison. The repetition in that painting and the repetition in this novel. I think,
Yeah, and also just the uncanniness, like
yeah,
perpetual uncanniness of my sister-in-law looks so strikingly like my wife, and my wife looks so unstrikingly like my wife. Um,
which is a great, that's a great phrase. My wife looks so unstrikingly like my wife. But yeah, no, no, sorry. I didn't want to derail you. I just wanted to call attention to, I really like that crossover point between mediums. I think it's true.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen like these. Yeah, there was another moment that this book remind. Oh God, yes. Now I remember. Just like weird coincidence, like forming some kind of surreptitious hidden meeting. Like that's kind of is something relevant to this novel. Like it fit certainly. I can. I remember one time I broke up with a girlfriend, and that was very difficult and unpleasant. And I was driving away, and literally while I like stopped at a crosswalk, a girl that I had dated and like that ceased to date was crossing the street in front of me. I I hadn't
Mm.
seen her in like since that had happened, like right before like the relationship started, but like I just saw her there and like what? What? Like I wasn't interested in pursuing or returning that criteria, but like it was so weird. Like it just like the rest of the drive was just haunted by like what is this coincidence that just occurred to me? Like what is the symbolism the universe is trying to dangle in front of my eyes so tantalizingly? Like it was
Yeah.
bizarre. And like that's what this novel that's the kind of thing that would fit in this novel.
Yeah. I mean, the kind of thing that fits in this novel is when I was thinking of the like so Lacan has this famous quote, there is no sexual relationship, and he doesn't mean it like we can't have sex because that would be stupid. He means it like your fantasy, it's almost a fantasy that your fantasies can align with the other person because they have their own fantasy. And so Zizek has this example where there's like a Budweiser commercial in the 90s and it's like the dog or whatever it is. It's the Frog Prince. And the basically the goal Zizek says is that it'd be really great if the frog was able to hook up with the bottle of beer because that would be the two fantasies aligning is the princess wants the frog to be a prince and the prince wants a bottle of beer and that's his fantasy. And so what Zizek does is he collapses them and he puts the frog getting together with a bottle of beer. And there's a little of that in this when he realizes how much he likes dogs. You know, because like that's where
That whole
Diana's
dog
soul actually
thing.
is.
Yeah, like the whole dog thing. Like that is again one of these like meaninglessly repeated motifs. Um,
It
in
is. It is.
like she's obsessed with dogs, and that's what makes them decide to put her away. And well, indecisive about them too. And he gets a dog who's named Diana, just like his wife. And he and then like it turns out like they put their soul into a dog and it's like none of these things are actually connected. There is no causal relationship between the dogs in this story. um
Well, I think like other than just the normal, familial affection of dogs, right? Like that's the only thing that holds it together.
yeah, well, as in just no plot reason
No.
for that. Like it's just like what are you it's it's just such an odd thing to be centered around. um
But I think it kind of works. But why it works, I either have to enter bullshit world or kind of poke fun at the object dog. I think it works partially because, well, their dogs are around a lot. They're our family friends, so they're a good object for that. There's always that uncanniness of how much your dog actually knows what the fuck's going on. So, you can kind of love your dog unquestionably.
I feel
You
like
know?
I feel like dogs are relevant in Lucia is, like a dog. No, just in a
Yeah.
broad sense of like, yeah, he's this nice and kind of weird and not strictly logical person. Like dogs are something relevant to this universe in that sense. Um, yeah, like this is a kind of a friendly world where you have dogs. Um, they're just
Like we're not like anyone listening, we're not lit professors here. We're just, I
yeah,
mean, but also uh, to give us a little credit, this is a very strange book.
yeah, yeah.
Unpacking what's going on here without gilding the lily is kind of hard to do. Because you want to look deep into it, but you don't want to look too deep because I think that in the paranoid literature, it's designed to give you signifiers to look deep into, but they're sort of only there to bolster the paranoia.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm meaning
Yeah,
about this, like the repeated motif of dogs is
yeah,
it's an empty symbol on a certain level. It's
yeah.
just
It's like
sort of
like a coin.
staring at you. Like it's like, yeah, it keeps coming up, and why exactly? No particular reason, but it's uncanny. It's uncanny the way that keeps happening.
I mean, it's funny. I thought like obviously they choose art not related to the book, but I thought for this one they chose the art they like made a photo to fit this book. You know what I mean? Because it was so perfect. But if you look on the back, it says beach scene, 1956, 1996.
I
Sorry.
yeah.
And okay, again, like sure, it's allergic to me. I mean, I think I'm allergic to making too much meaning out of it. Whereas like okay, so like in the last one we did in the great what's his name Mishima,
Yeah.
a lot of it was looking at the text and looking at like how the golden work there was often the psychological insights that he provided about the human condition and the duration of grief. Those were the two things I thought were really brilliant about that. This one, I had, I was just so entertained. It's hard for me to describe exactly why it was great. I just, and in the first half, I again, like I was texting you, I didn't like it as much. By the end, I loved it. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's a book that takes a while to get into the swing of things. Like if I started over again, I'd be enjoying the first half.
Exactly. It
Like
wasn't his fault. It was just me reading a new writer that had a different sense of life.
yeah, I mean, but like there were moments early on that I like really liked. Like yeah, he gets called down to have lunch with somebody about something, and he says, "I ran down the street. In Buggy's Cafe, I chose a table from where you could see the entrance at all times. I ordered something, and before they served me, I was already wondering if I shouldn't have head down for the dog school. What made me say, I'll be right there, and hang up? Perhaps the professor thought I would go to the school, but if I didn't get there on time, maybe he'd wonder if there didn't mean Buggy's, and perhaps we'd meet or miss each other on the way." Um, it's just like, what a little nod of neuroticism right there. Isn't that
Yeah.
perfect? Um,
Yeah, it was perfect. And it was so, I mean, Lucio is Adolfo, right? Like it's like, he's just like writing like, all right, let me tell you how my life is. It gets that sort of confessional feeling in the first person, weirdly, which could be totally false, but
it's
I don't know if it can be, actually.
something. It's like it's such an endearing detail. Where like I know I've had that happen to me.
Yeah.
I know like that's happened where it's like, wait, when I said this, okay, yeah, it happened to me the other day. Like I was going out for meet someone and like, wait, should I be outside of the restaurant or inside the restaurant? Should I text that I got there? Like, oh, I don't know.
And after COVID, these types of texts and that type of neurotic stuff is so relevant. Like okay, so I have a coworker who won't be named because he might watch it, but let's just say that so he's got like stuff, and so he's got problems. So he wears a mask because he's really paranoid, and so someone comes in with a mask and he goes, I can't check them out. They might be sick. And I go, but you're wearing a mask. He goes, well, I know I'm not sick. And I made the mistake of going, you don't really know that. I know, I felt terrible afterward, but like, I apologize. But it is like it's kind of like that, right? Like you don't know what's right or wrong. If you're in a conservative part of the world, like rural Utah and stuff, like if you wear a mask, it's a sign that you're not hospitable to people. That you're kind of one of them city folk. You go into the city and you don't wear a mask, you come across as like selfish. You can't win
Hmm.
because no matter where you are, it's a different social code.
Yeah.
And you can't get onto the wavelength of that code without first kind of blundering around, which is why I was really happy to be married during COVID dating because I was like, I don't know how you guys are doing that. I'm assuming it was okay, but probably weird.
Yeah, I did a little bit of dating during COVID. It was it was fine.
Okay, good. All right.
It wasn't too bad, but that was also like literally right when COVID like got big.
Like
um,
a celebrity, like Taylor Swift getting big.
yeah, it was like it was odd. Anyway, that whole period of life was odd.
Sorry, that's a way to derail a conversation.
I'd
Is well
say like
during COVID,
well,
like
actually, I do want to say like there's something like kind of similar about it. Just like seeing all the streets empty and just life being oddly upended and the awkwardness of things. Like that was relevant. That is relevant to dear Boya.
it
Um,
is. I also think what's relevant to him, not in a political sense. I'm not saying that this. I would hate it if someone came out and said, "This is why we need to reform the mental health industry." I mean, that'd be great, right? That would be like, but I think that where it's deeper than that is, there is always some way for someone to get power over you, and that itself can be a fuel for neurotic paranoia. Like the doctor has the edge, and boy, does Lucio feel like an idiot when he gives in to him in the second half. Because he's such a like kind of he's gullible in a sense. Lucio's kind of gullible. Like I don't think you or I, if the wife came back a different person and I had escaped, I don't think you or I would have anything to do with the man again.
well, I mean, he has the wife there, and he seems like one thing. Like, there's this funny things. Like, I had no idea what it was going. When he said, like, "Look, we interned you here, completely voluntarily. You never expressed a desire to leave." It's like what? Wait, he could have just left. Like, the doctor isn't this sinister figure like he seems to be. Um, then you find out, no, no, no.
He's the bad guy, but he's just so cartoonishly hilarious. It's like,
It's like, Jesus Christ.
well, it's like, and then like the other lady was right. Like you have to get out of here. The nurse was like, you have to get out of here, although because you'll never have any hope. When you're first reading it, you're like, yeah, okay. And then it's like, oh no, Becky or whatever her name was, like, she was
Paula.
Paula. Paula was dead right on that point. It was like, yeah, you have to get the fuck out because they're gonna take out your soul.
Also, it's just funny how a not insignificant part of the narrative is spent on talking about writing about the narrative. Um, like
We got like the letter. The whole thing is framed as a letter.
yeah, like the letters to his friend. Christ, what was his name? It's dude, that's like part two, the shortest part two ever seen.
It
Um,
was so silly. Part two. It's like the last 8 pages.
yeah, no, it's four. It's like 4 pages. Like I got
That's 4 pages. Three and a half.
yeah, it's like we got Felix Ramos, which I don't even remember if this character was mentioned earlier. Like maybe once he was dimly mentioned. Like oh, I haven't seen Felix in years or something like that. But he's writing this. He just needs to write a letter to say, "Help! Get me out of here, please. That's all he needs to write. And instead, he
That's
starts writing
true.
this
Yes.
quasi autobiography, um, like, which is just like Jesus Christ, man. Like I just want to mention, like, actually, because it comes up like sometimes he's talking about it, like he's addressing the reader. While I walked, holding her by the arm, believe me, I had a strong desire to kiss her. You wonder if I lost my sense of decency. Believe me, I'm telling you these intimate things for the pleasure of. I'm not telling you these intimate things for the pleasure of airing them, because I think they can be meaningful to understanding of the mysterious and extraordinary events that happened afterwards. Really? I mean, sure, like in the course of the novel, but not as framed as letters that you're sending, and you're secretly sending through Paula. Um, what are
Well,
you?
I think it. I mean, that's why the ending is so hauntingly hilarious. Like when it's like she ran until she was in front of me, waving her arms and shouting hysterically, "The one who came back isn't Lucho! The one who came back isn't Lucho!" You know, it fits somehow.
Yeah.
I
God.
mean, I was totally confused, but
No, I was fine. I mean, I knew that. Like, I got it because it was just like, yeah, like they just switched his soul at the end. You know?
yeah, that's what I was thinking. But then who's oh, it is by Ramos. That's got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. It switches to the other person's perspective. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I everything was making sense except for I forgot that it was actually written by or from the Ramos's perspective.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
I
It's
think like also the traumatic aspect of it, like because it's so cute in that way and kind of like dogs are nice, trauma isn't the right word at all.
well,
It's like it's more like the deepness of uncanny moments than it is like the trauma of uncanny moments.
yeah. Okay. One thing is like whenever we use that word trauma, it's meant just in the way of like something that's like cutting through habits and like showing you some other aspect of reality that you just sort of didn't see before, that you were sort of numb to previously.
This definitely succeeded in that
Yeah,
definition.
yeah. Like it is very much like this particular flavor of neuroticism, of just sort of friendly, quaint neuroticism, and like just life being filled with little uncanny things and oddly repeated phrases and doubles. It's like all of that. It's like, yeah, that is a part of life. That is something that is like present. It's something new to me, to actually really have that highlighted. So I'm very glad I read it. It's not one of my more favorite books. I've enjoyed most of the things we've read a bit more than this, ultimately, but I really got a lot out of it.
I don't know. I mean, sometimes there's this. I think one of the most mysterious aesthetic markers is amplitude, like in the metaphorical sense of like he's a great writer. There is nothing wrong with it. Brilliantly done. But it didn't speak to me at the amplitude of other works we've read. And it's kind of a mysterious thing to try and figure out why.
I think part of it is the people. Like I do believe in his people, but they really are not my kind of people. Like
No, I mean,
quaint.
it's a weird way to say that. What do you mean by that?
No, what's weird about that? Like, yeah, I believe they exist. Like, I know they're out there, and I can see myself in them. Like,
Yeah.
but it's really not. They're not my kind of people. Like, I don't identify with that whole way of being. Like
Yeah.
I
Oh, I got
identify, like Joyce's people. I identify with like these
yeah.
very sort of delicate, thoughtful, intelligent, intellectual, and sad, trampled people. Like I identify with that very much. So like that's very much home. These people enjoying who are asleep in the sun. Um, that's not me. That's not me.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had that same issue with like Malloy, De Benedetto. I had an issue with a lot of our fun modernist neurotics, as I don't.
Murphy.
Uh,
Murphy.
Murphy. What did I say?
You said
Malloy.
Malloy.
Sorry, Murphy, not Malloy.
You'll love Malloy when you
I'm
read
excited about Malloy. Yeah, sorry. And I feel like this is actually going to be something really interesting when we read Platonov that I want to revisit. Is like I had I related to the extremity, the extremeness in which Platonov's characters related to life,
it.
but they're also all very strange. So I want to revisit that because I feel like it's going to be another nuanced one. Is like,
Yeah.
are Platonov's people our people?
Yeah. So just more neuroticism. Um,
Platonov's a little bit different.
yeah, yeah,
It'll
yeah.
be, it's not going to be the same. Like I I've loved all these sort of first person weirdos novels that we've been
First
reading.
person weirdos.
I'm
That's a good genre.
I think I might be done with them for a little bit. Like I think I'm like, yeah, I got that. I got the modernist first person thing. It's a very, very specific flavor of ice cream. It's like, yeah. But yeah, great choice. Ray. It was fun. I mean, I know you picked four and I picked Owen, but I'll give you I know
By
we're
the
gonna
way,
do Platinum
like
next
two of
time.
the other ones in those four, like were again modernist weirdos.
Modern
First person weirdos.
do the Beetlejuice quote. I myself am strange and unusual.
Yeah, there you go.
All right,
This was
cool.
this was kind of a short episode, but that's fine.
Yeah,
Whatever. It's funny. It's like we read like a full novel and we spend less time on it than like a lot of short stories that we do. Sort of just funny how that turns out.
it is funny. I also think that might be part of that amplitude issue I have is like there's other stuff we could go into, but it's not really part of my desire. Whereas like the Mishima is like every sentence of it is part
Every
of my
single
desire.
page.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. So see you later, Chris.
I'll
See ya.
text you some ideas of short stories from the Platinum. I haven't read these, so I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's Platinov's Soul, right?
Yeah, we should probably do Soul,
Yeah. All right.
the
Great.
titular one. Okay.
Bye.
Good to hear from you.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
All right.